Ladies and gentlemen.
Hey guys, welcome back to the podcast, A Lion Among the Sheep. We're back at you again right after Christmas, like we promised. Coach Jamie's with me, as always. Coach Jamie, how are you today?
Hey, I'm doing great, Coach Scott. How are you?
Doing terrific. It's been a long day. I'll reflect, I've had car issues. My buddy and I'm not a mechanic by any means. I have very minimal mechanical talents, but my friend and we changed my radiator in my car, saved me probably $600 with the garage. But not only that, I like to do these things. It was fun.
Yeah,
It was fun, tiring. But at the end of the week, hope everybody had a great week. Christmas. Hey, you guys, thanks for reaching out to us on that NIL and transfer portal that Coach Jamie went through. We appreciate your interest. And that being said, we're going to do another follow up because we really didn't hit all the topics, right, Coach? There's a lot more to talk about in that.
sure.
We probably could have done 2 hours of that, but we're not gonna do 2 hours. But hey, guys, I want to talk to you about it's basically a novella. I read this, one of my good friends. He's a soccer coach. Coach Eric gave me a book his girlfriend wrote. It's called Oil of Joy. Her name is Christine De Costa. She had battled with bipolar disorder for her whole life. And she finally embraced the battle, embraced the condition, the disorder, and she overcame it with the grace of God. And she did it not only through, more primarily, not through medication, but through her Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. And I read this, it's 31 pages. I'm going to put an Instagram link below. If you want to reach out to her, we're going to have her on because I started reading this. I read the first page a week ago and I realized this is a read that it's not, once you start reading it, you gotta embrace it. You gotta engulf, it's going to engulf you. It did. So I sat the other day and read the whole book and it was quite emotional because as I said in my, Coach Jamie, you can attest to this. I said in my Christmas Day little snippet, we all have problems. We all have trials and tribulations, and it's what we have to overcome them. Some do and some don't. It's how we take it.
Right.
And so you peel way back the layers of onions and we find out the core of who we are. And, she talks about, he turned my trials into triumphs. And that's a key. That's what makes lions among the sheep, taking trials and tragedy and turn them into triumph. So we're going to have her on because she actually talks about being a lion here. I was like, wow, it's towards the end of the read. So I'm going to put this in there. If you want to reach out to Christine, wonderful person, we're going to have her on here to tell her story and to give her testimony about how she overcame her battle with bipolar. But Coach, back to NIL in the transfer portal. Why don't we do this? Why don't we just give us a little, for people who are joining us and they didn't see the last episode, if you want to learn more about NIL, go back and watch our podcast from Christmas Eve. But why don't you just go give us a brief synopsis again, Coach, about, what the NIL is, what the NIL is.
Yeah, sure, Scott. So the NIL, which stands for name, image, and likeness, allows for collegiate and now high school athletes to be able to receive endorsements, also sponsorship, and from brands to be able to benefit financially from their image and so forth, their likeness in terms of even in video games. It's a whole gamut of different platforms that now athletes on the high school level, collegiate level, we've all known that professional athletes can participate because they're professional athletes. But over the last several years, the NIL has really revolutionized college sports, and it's really starting to take hold of high school sports as well. And we talked a little bit about the different nuances of how it works, some of the challenges, but also it's allowing athletes to really put themselves in great financial positions. I think we all kind of talked about as well as just some of those booby traps that what happens when you all of a sudden are in a position where you're getting 6 and 7 figures as a young person and just trying to navigate that and make good sound financial decisions, but also understanding the responsibility that goes along now that you're being paid basically for your performance and your name, image, and likeness.
It's such a drastic change from just a few years ago where they were
Mhm.
dead set against not paying any collegiate athletes anything, just
Yeah.
give them room, board, stipend, and scholarship. But before we go into that further, Coach, I want to call you out. I'm going to call you out on my shirt. Okay, for those who don't know, Coach Jamie's married to a wonderful Polish woman from Poland, and people who know me in Pittsburgh may know that I'm half Polish. And so I was talking to Coach Jamie and his wife last night, and I was telling her my family's from Warsaw. I'm sorry, Krakow, and we started talking. Now I
Right.
know three sentences in Polish. So I told her I was in honor of her Polish heritage. I was going to wear my Polish shirt. So I came
Yeah.
on today and I said, Coach Jamie, what's this? He's like, I don't know. It's an eagle. So I called him out. I said, your wife's not going to be happy when she watches this
Well,
podcast.
this
That
is
you
true.
did
This is
not know this
true.
is a Polish eagle and my Polish.
I I do agree with you. Yeah. So thank God, at the time that we're doing this, she is not around. She's not present. So it's gonna try to keep it. I'm gonna try to keep it a secret as long as I can, Scott.
Until I see her next time. Okay. Okay. That being said, let's move on to the NIL.
Uh,
And it's interesting. So we talked about your role, and if you could just briefly tell how you've been involved with this, what your role as a management for these young student
yeah.
athletes.
Sure. So it was actually by I'd say by chance because as you know, I'm very involved with philanthropy and doing things and giving back. And over the years, I've met some great families and always been involved as we both have in athletics and performance and everything that goes along with it. And so it started with me just parents asking me my advice in terms of the recruiting process, being that we both have competed and played sports, um, just trying to navigate that and have I guess, a voice of reason, I call it,
Right.
somebody that they can kind of say, well, kind of how does this work, and actually help them prepare. So it was through those experiences that, as this NIL thing started to evolve, I started getting phone calls. And as you know, I'm involved with commercial real estate and private equity and development
Right.
and real estate, but I've always had a passion, as we talked about several times over the podcast, with sports and everything that we do, even our health and wellness and so forth. So it started with me sitting in with parents and with them in the recruiting process. And then as that kind of evolved, then it kind of multiplied. It started
Right.
with one family, then it was two, and it's just kind of grown. And so how it ended up happening was I started being a part of the NIL from the beginning of how to navigate, what does the agreement look like? How is the student athlete going to be compensated? In the things that we talked about in the first podcast about the collective, and then you
Right.
have the actual institution, and then you have brands that often look to identify student athletes that they feel that are going to represent their brand and obviously give them an opportunity to get in front of more potential customers. So that's really how I got started. It started with giving just a basic advice on what are some of the key drivers and what to look for, and then really thinking through the process when you're being recruited. And I'll keep it simple, but it's just not going to a Power 5 school. It's going to a school where obviously you're going to like the coaches, depending on what your goals are for academia, but it's about the ability to actually play. And then two, how do you fit into the system? We all know, if it was just as easy as just sign,
Right.
it would be. And maybe that is for your top 100 kids, right? But we know for most kids, it's really about systems, right? And how you fit in. And so the organization, we became a catalyst for that. And then it led to us, having kids,
Right.
helping them with the marketing, helping the institutions too. And one key point, most institutions, they're flying by the seat of their pants. And that's not in any regard in a negative thing, but it's when something's new, and we all know how private universities work, public universities, they're allocated a certain amount of resources. And so as we talked about the alumni, now you have to work into the equation the ability to figure out how do we be competitive where we know football, basketball, women's Basketball has become a major driver now, as we know. And so, how do you navigate that? So, we found a niche where we were able to provide them a
Right.
platform to be able to help them understand the nuances, our relationships with brands, and just helping the institutions understand how to best position themselves. I mean, listen, having an institution that's there to help the kids in terms of making sure they do go to class on time, they have their classes, they have support system. It's a whole different animal now where you're talking about how do you determine how to manage a kid that has obligations to the collective to show up and do a photo shoot or to do a book signing or do a jersey signing, right?
Right.
So that's kind of in a nutshell. As you mentioned before, there's so many moving parts. I mean, we can talk
Yes.
hours in detail about all the moving parts that go along with it. But for me and our team, it was really by default and the love for helping people be successful. I think you and I live by this principle, right? Your
Absolutely.
value comes by solving problems. That's what value is, no matter what we all do. And
Yeah.
so we are able to
Absolutely.
solve problems for families and for institutions, and
Right.
also solve problems for brands and helping them really connect with the talent and then figure out how to facilitate the best working relationships. So it's a beneficial all parties involved.
Okay, let me ask you a couple questions. First of all, do they even have limitations on scholarships anymore? I mean, before they'd be like, you have so many scholarships for
Yeah.
football, baseball, women's volleyball, women, do they even have those anymore? Because you don't hear that. You say, well, these are like 10, 30
Yeah.
scholarships to give. I mean, does the big does the NCAA even limit scholarships, or basically with this NIL numbers, basically money falling from heaven, it seems. So
That yeah, no, it's a great question, but they do have the and as much as they try, Scott. So behind the curtain, they try, right?
okay,
So as you know, there's still schools for certain violations. Like if you talk to a kid in a period where it's considered dead period, you've seen coaches get
right,
fined or they may lose, not necessarily the scholarship, it depends on the infraction,
right,
but it is one of those things where it is separate. Whereas the NIL is really, and I think I may have alluded to this before, it has made college sports, they're really professional athletes. That's what they really are.
they are,
They are. And so the scholarships are there, but they still have restrictions. You have so many scholarships that you can allocate, and
yeah,
that's what it is. And it's based on, each conference and the NCAA, they have specific guidelines that determine each year this is how many scholarships you're allowed to allocate, you're allowed to redshirt and so forth. So those things still exist.
okay,
Where the gray area is that now with the NIL, you have kids that potentially could sit on the shelf per se
okay,
for a number of reasons and it not directly be financially a debt to the university,
okay,
right?
right,
Because of the way the collectives, can work, right? Because it's really not regulated. I think that's what's been a big challenge is trying to find some common ground of some do's and don'ts without really restricting the athlete because there's always that gray area. The more regulation you have to some degree, how do you make it where it's fair to the athletes, but also trying to create a conducive environment of fairness. And we already know that there's not fairness when you look at I use the SEC and the ACC primarily because they are major drivers in the college spectrum.
right,
But when you're talking about Texas, you're talking about Florida State. You're
yeah,
talking about schools that have a strong alumni base and they have great boosters that they want their school to be successful. I think I alluded to Florida State has one of the top five in terms of capital set aside
right,
in the whole country. However, if you look at their past season, and that's not to say that it could be a number of things, right? It's getting the right people in the right positions to
right,
perform. So it's just different now, and there's no one size fits all. I don't think like now where you see schools that have violations, they may lose several scholarships. Yeah, it hurts. We saw, unfortunately, what happened in Miami over a period of time where they had some things that happened in other institutions as well. They've all, certainly certain have had issues. So it does limit your ability to recruit, to be able to have develop papers through
Right.
your program, whether it's whatever sport it is. But we all know the major sports right now, it's college football and college basketball really drive the marketplace, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, so I hope to answer your question is that it is different. They do have regulations. They do each year have a specific amount of scholarship they can allocate. But because of the NIL, it's really changed the landscape. It's really become who has the most money that can actually go out and get the best players. And hopefully they fit your program and you'll win. And unfortunately, Florida State, if I'm not mistaken, they may have won 3 games this year. And you all
Somewhere it
know
was
what
that.
happened. And I'm not picking on Florida State. It's a great institution. But it goes to show you just because you have the most money, it doesn't mean it transitions into getting the most wins.
As we said, five-star athletes don't translate to being great players all the time.
Right.
So,
Right.
so,
Right.
but here's the thing: the NC, this seems like we're in the wild, wild west with NIL now. Do you think the NCAA is going to really come in because they've tried to regulate things, and we've, like I said, the Bannon brothers back from UCLA back in was it the
Yeah.
'80s suing them? I think it seems like the courts are really frowning upon over regulation of these athletes, hindering their ability to
Yeah.
go out. Hence, we have NIL. I don't know. I just don't see the NCAA really coming down on this because they're making billions of dollars. And so it's a money maker. So why would they start to restrict the athlete's ability to generate more money for them?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think that, kind of I mentioned on the last podcast, I used the analogy about Blockbuster and Netflix.
Netflix, absolutely.
Um, and it's unfortunate because, as I alluded before, the NCAA had an opportunity to structure some kind of revenue sharing model, maybe,
Right.
right? That could have held this off to some degree, or when the banning case happened,
Right.
they would have had some momentum to offset that by saying, hey, yes, there has been in the past, but here's what we're doing to correct, right? In good faith. And it may have given them more footing with that. But because of the neglect, right? The neglect of not being proactive, now everything is just now the train's going and everything that they've tried to
Right.
propose, they said, hey, they're still making billions of dollars, but it's changed the whole narrative of college sports.
It
And
has.
now they don't have control. Because remember, there was a time if someone, at least, Reggie Bush, right? Remember the whole
I
thing
remember
with
that
him?
absolutely,
And
Reggie
now
Bush.
he's suing the NCAA
Right.
for stripping him of his Heisman Trophy.
Yeah.
So and now you got guys who played prior to NIL now saying, "Hey, I should be compensated for the millions of dollars that I helped generate through TV
Right.
revenue, through advertisements, through apparel." So, they really, and you know how like you can't put a band-aid on it and you
Right.
just have
Right.
to they have to get ahead, meaning they have to really at this point where they are right now, it's like how to really partner with the new NIL system opposed to trying to stop it, right? I think that's problematic.
You said, the train has left the station. There's no
Yeah,
stopping.
yeah,
There's no
yeah,
stopping
yeah.
NIL.
There's no stopping.
It's going down the tracks at full speed. But
Yeah.
okay, let's transition to something else. This
All right.
is something we're going to do more podcasts on this down the road because just the funding itself could be a 2 hour. I've got so many more questions on the funding, but I want to transition. How you left the last podcast was talking about these kids. Like how
Right.
do you get a high school kid? You're talking about the maturity level. How do you
Right.
how do you deal with them? The parents who think they're going to be the next Heisman Trophy winner, and they're being recruited by all the Big Five, and how do you deal with these kids to keep them mentally focused and gain the maturity level necessary to actually go to the next level without losing incentive? Yeah, that's a
Well,
huge thing.
yeah, I think being honest with kids, I personally think, we don't give kids enough credit in terms of their ability to comprehend things and to process it. I think sometimes we use very velvet gloves when we
Right.
kind of dealing with them. And I understand that, but I think there's a certain part of just having real conversations with kids because
Yeah.
some kids get it, the kids get it who they're real focused on the academia, they're real focused about what they want to accomplish in their sport or even getting an academic scholarship, but
Yeah.
there are a lot of kids that they just don't know what it takes because they haven't seen it, right?
Right.
And
Right.
so then a lot of the kids, if you're a top tier kid, you're going to get things that other kids don't get. And so how do you still maintain that hungerness to want to get better and to excel and to do the things that you need to do? We find that helping them develop emotional intelligence, and the way
Exactly.
we do that is we really take the time to really try to understand where they are in their emotional intelligence, right?
Right.
And the way you can assess that as someone who's, studied that and the 7 habits and, did crucial conversations, which is
Right.
another part of that personal development and emotional development, is we try to really take the time to really understand the athlete as a person
Right.
and then the
Right.
triggers of that person, but also helping them develop coping mechanisms from life, right? Because there are
Yeah.
going to be times where you're going to be the 5-star guy, but there may be a guy, and I hate to use these kind of numbers, but that's what the system has at this time, right? You're 5, you're 4, you're 3, you're 2, or you're 1. That's just
Right.
what it is.
Right.
So
Right.
we just have to get past that, but figure out, okay, if you are a 3, how do you get to be a 4?
Right.
And are you emotionally ready to do the things that going to require you to do, which meaning eating good, having good nutrition, doing the things you need to do in class, being serious about your
Right.
craft, taking care of your body. So I find what happens to a lot of kids, they're not ready for all of the distractions
Right.
that are
Right.
going to happen when you get on campus as a freshman, right? And
Right.
then also when you start getting all this attention. So we believe that one of the most important things, if you look at people who have great success, look at their support system. If you look at the
Right.
people that have terrible success,
Absolutely.
don't have good success, or are not successful, and there are people that are exceptions to the rule, but your circle of influence, the people that are there to support you and be there for you to give you advice or just be a good listener, right? You can't put a price on that. Not the people that just say whatever you want because you're on their payroll,
Right.
and even as a young kid. And what I see is that a lot of times these kids, they don't have a good foundation from the beginning.
Right.
And there's some
Right.
great parents out there, but at the same time, like I said, your support system and having the right people around you, to me, is one of the most important things, whether you're a 5-star, 4-star, 3-star, 2, whatever it is. And
Right.
and just being a productive person in society.
A lot of it stems from the high school you come from. I mean,
Yeah.
we have down here in Florida, we have St. Thomas Aquinas, where
Yeah.
the whole coaching staff's ex professional football players are definitely top level University of Miami. And I think the athletic director is a former professional football player from there. So you got a heck of a support system there. But I
Right.
think with the not the danger is when you got a guy come out of a small school in the middle of nowhere, Texas,
Right.
Alabama, Georgia, who really has not, it's just pure talent without the
Right.
support. Now, how do you navigate through that? I mean, you have some guy who comes in, dad's out of the picture, and I've seen what was
Yeah.
that Second Chance You that podcast was Amazon Prime. That
Right.
was entertaining. That was didactic. That was
It
really
was.
eye
Yeah.
opening. That
Yeah.
was like, how do you get kids like that? How do you get them to focus? Those kids were held athletes, but they just
Yeah.
they just couldn't put it together. They couldn't put it together.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
something.
Yeah. Yeah. No, Scott, that's a great point. And what we find really the core, the kids just need to know that you care.
Yeah,
And I think we all have to step back and say all kids, right? It's their environment and it's how they interact in that environment and what they experience in their environment. We have this saying, we try to involve the family and we also try to involve the immediate circle, because it's almost like when someone is having a difficult time in life, no matter what it is,
right.
we believe these principles are true to everything.
Yeah,
If you're going to help someone, everybody's got to be on board, meaning everybody has to be on board and be about how do we help the athlete or the person get better? And are we saying the right things? Are we providing the right support? Are we demonstrating the right behaviors?
right.
And are we saying these things? Because it's going to be a transition, and that's one of the reasons. If many of our kids, when we talk with them, they have grad assistants, and a lot of them have those grad assistants that are very involved with the entire sports team outside of the coach.
Yeah,
They're there to be support. They're there to, be a positive reinforcement.
right.
And because it's a big difference, even having a father, right?
Yeah,
are
exactly.
having your mom, right? So and if you have a mom, it's really hard to or a dad, it's hard to understand what it's like when someone doesn't have one, and vice versa. And I'm
Right,
not
right.
saying by any means that it's a prerequisite, but we know that having the right support system is the key, and we just stay with the principles of that,
And
of how do you give the person, have conversations with them about their mental health,
right.
right? About, hey, some of the kids, you'll be surprised, I can say this, they're top tier kids, and you know, any kid to me that can get a scholarship in a sport,
Yeah.
there's amount of discipline it took. I don't care if it's
Absolutely.
D1, D2, NIA, whatever
Anything.
it is.
1% of all
It's a
kids get
it's
those.
a
So
discipline it takes, right? I'm always amazed when I'm talking with them about, hey, how was school? Hey, I'm checking in with you. They didn't have the best game. Are they kind of in the rotation? They out? Are they start to question going in the portal? And now they're, you know, at a school where they're not playing 28 minutes a game. Now they're playing maybe 7. And now the doubt creeps in even more. So what I say honestly is building kids up, but not in a way where it's unrealistic. If you're
right.
the ninth guy on the team and getting in the game, you know, let's just get to getting more playing time, that because everything is competitive, and that's
It
the
was
thing.
competitive.
It's competitive.
It's
So
competitive.
you have to perform. If you perform one way or the other, and this is a whole nother story, but you and I know if somebody's writing a check at a university for
Right.
$10 million, they have their name on a building. I don't care where you come from. If that kid and you are equal, they're gonna play.
Right. Right. You know, there's so many questions. It's just
So
such
it's
a,
that's just the honest truth.
it's
But
no,
if
you're
you
right.
know
You're right.
that,
You're
then
right.
you better bust, you know what, to do
Right.
what you need to do to get on the court. I don't care if it's hockey, I don't care if it's soccer, I don't care if
Whatever
it's
it is. Okay.
lacrosse,
Whatever
I
it
don't care if
is.
it's basketball.
Yeah.
If you don't even know sports, you know it's just like the kid that his dad pays for everybody on the tribal team.
Right. Right. He's
All
going to play.
right,
He's going to play.
he's
He's,
gonna
he's
play.
going to play because
So
without,
so
without, yeah.
and that's okay, but you have to know that so you don't end up you know what I say? I tell kids, don't focus on the
Right.
minors.
Right. Right.
Focus on the things you can control. Whatever happens,
And
happens,
like,
but
that's a lifelong
don't be
lesson.
lazy and put the work in.
Right. Well, listen, you certainly put the work in, buddy. And this again, this is a topic we could go on and on about. But you know, unfortunately, we only have so many times, so many hours in the day to go, and so many minutes in the day to these podcasts. And we're going to probably start to expand this podcast a little longer eventually, because I've asked people to get into more detail, bring on more people, which we will. But
Absolutely.
you know, we're gonna revisit this again. It's gonna be a longer podcast because there's more questions I have. There's a lot more questions. I know the viewers have questions too, but Coach, as always, thank you for your insightful conversation. Just like really open, because I know people said I didn't understand it. I understand NIL, the transfer portal, and we really haven't even touched on the transfer portal. There's so many things I want to get into that we will, but they said I now understand NIL, and honestly, I love talking with you because it opens my mind. It opens up, you know, I don't understand it completely. I'm learning it.
Right.
It's a journey. So you've been taking us down this journey. Thank you for leading us, Coach Jamie. Um, we really, I know I appreciate it. I know people who have reached out to me appreciate it. I'm sure people who have talked to you appreciate it as well. But any
Yeah,
last
thanks,
thoughts
Scott.
as we leave this wonderful year
You
into
know,
the beginning year?
it's so much to it. I think it's just, I think you know, Scott, I say this, I live by this principle.
Mhm.
It's a joy to give people information that
Absolutely.
they can take away from it, and it's factual information, then they can make an educated decision. So even if it's someone who has someone in their family, you know, because at the end of the day, I just believe like you want to have factual data so you can make an
Right.
educated decision. And this stuff is really can be life changing for kids.
It can
Good,
be. It can be. Could
and
it
it can be bad.
bad?
So I
Exactly.
want to be on the good side of making a positive contribution, and our value comes from, you know, what we bring to the
Absolutely.
marketplace. And I just believe that, man. And so it's a lot of fun to share, and hopefully someone may have a conversation, and
Right.
and
Right.
something from what you shared, I've shared, will have an impact on them making the right decision for
You know
their
what?
family, for their son or daughter,
Absolutely.
niece or nephew, friend, that will put them in the best position. We have to be about people getting better in life, period, right?
You know
And
what?
so this
Absolutely.
is one part of it, but I believe that we have to surround ourselves with the right people and provide great information so people can build on and become better.
No doubt. And guys, I hope you feel that we're providing you with great information, insightful conversations. And that's what we try to do here. We're striving to make lions among the sheep. And we look forward and we thank you for your participation, your comments. And if you like what we're doing, hit like and subscribe and share this with your friends and family. We look forward to seeing you back here on New Year's Eve. 2025 is around the corner. So everybody have a great day. Have a great weekend. God bless you. And we'll see you next week. Take care, people.
0, 1. Let's get started.